Hey guys, what's up? It's Ignis here, and today we're going to be going over builds. That's the whole intro. We're going to go over builds. Let's go. All right, so this build takes a lot of explanation. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to just demonstrate what happens with it first, and then we'll come back and we'll try to explain all the parts to it. One, because there's a lot of mechanics here that are very advanced for warframes that are causing this to happen. And two, because I have to like talk a little bit about heat inherit. I have to talk a little bit about how manifold bond works. I have to, yeah, it's a very complicated build, but what I want you to notice here is that the end result for this is that the weapon ends up causing the dot chain that you'd kind of normally expect from like a pet nuke. Okay, so the first thing that you should be aware of is that when I was demonstrating this, I only had two mods equipped. The first is Contagious Bond. That was the thing that like when an enemy dies, it spreads the status to everybody else. And then the second one is Manifold Bond here. Manifold Bond will apply status when your companion does damage with abilities. So if your companion does an ability, I think probably the most common known version of this is Arc Coil on Doriga with Manifold Bond equipped. And what you can see is that like if I go and I walk up to these guys and my Doriga starts shooting at things, they get a whole bunch of statuses on them, right? This is arguably one of the best primers in the entire game because Sentinels are very, very easy to revive on top of just having a ton of other utility. And so usually if you see a Doriga, this is kind of what you're expecting is they're just hovering on you and they're priming like this, right? But for that original demonstration, you'll notice that I didn't have any abilities here. There's no abilities going on. The only thing that I had was Volt itself and nothing else. And the reason for that is because if you apply something like Wisp's shock motes, or in this case, shocking speed to your Sentinel, these count as the abilities from the Sentinel. So there's only a handful of abilities in the game that even work like this, even slightly. Actually, I think Wisp's shock mote and this are like the only two that really do it. If there's more, please let me know in the comments because it's really important. But you can see that like if I just roll through them with shocking speed equipped here, which is that big electric AoE that you can see around me, my pet gets it too. And so because my pet has that shocking aura, it says Manifold Bond, apply all of these statuses to the enemy. And you can see it ends up doing quite a bit of damage too, just because we're viral priming them and we're applying a heat dot and all these other dots too. So it ends up being really, really good just like a priming tool for Volt. So this is very important by itself. The other thing that you'll notice here is that I actually have Summoner's Wrath equipped on my Volt. This also applies to that shocking aura for my pet's damage. So we have two shocking auras. We have the one around Volt themselves, and then we have the one that is applied to our Sentinel. This is going to be increasing the Sentinel's one by 75% damage, and that includes all of the DOT that it does. The other important thing about this is that Contagious Bond is heat inheritable, and so is Summoner's Wrath. So these heat dots that my pet is applying will receive the benefits of heat inherit. So like if I do a heat dot with my melee weapon or with a primary weapon like the Boar Prime here, the heat dots that this weapon creates will use Summoner's Wrath for the damage, and then it'll also use Contagious Bond like when it kills them. So let me see if I can demonstrate that really quick just with the Boar, because the Boar, if you're not aware, this thing's incarnate mode is basically entirely heat dots. Like if I do this, you can see that we get a ton of heat dots, like just so many. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to prime them with the shocking speed aura like this, so that they get that first heat dot on them and they can receive the heat inherited stuff. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to shoot at them with this, and you'll see the damage will do more damage. And then when it kills them, Contagious Bond will go off and kill everybody. So that's kind of the effect that we're going for here, right? Is we're using shocking speed itself to do the priming, and then we're using some sort of heat dot weapon to increase those heat dots so that we actually get the kill from our Contagious Bond chain source. So let's do the same thing, but this time I'm going to show you it with Ghoulsaw again. The reason I'm showing it with Ghoulsaw is because this combo, which is its block combo, its forward block combo, will ride like this, and then it does a slam at the end like this. And this slam will proc Afflictions. It just works like a normal slam basically. So you'll see that like if I go and I drive through these enemies like this, and then it does the slam, you'll see that we got 5 impact procs here. It's a very high movement weapon, and then on top of that, it is one of the best Afflictions sources for a regular melee weapon. So that's why we're using this specifically. The other part of this is that you'll notice that we don't have any elemental damage on here. That's because we want the heat dot to do the killing, right? And if I put like a heat mod on here, for example, because of the way heat inherit works, this would do nothing. It only takes elemental mods from the original source. It doesn't take it from like the melee weapon itself. So we need to just run whatever we can to boost that heat dot with our melee damage, and we'll just otherwise ignore any elemental damage. So that's kind of the purpose of this. The math for Afflictions ends up leading to some weird stuff too, but you can just sort of think of the only things that really matter here are Elementalist and then Roar on our Volt, which is what I have over 4 here. In theory, for this build, you could do it over 1 here instead, or over 3. I just do it over 4 because my normal Volt build is also a Roar build, so it runs it over 4. So the other thing that you'll notice here is that I'm not running Shock Trooper here. Normally, if you're doing a weapons platform build for Volt, you would be running Shock Trooper over something here. But the issue with this is that it'll basically dilute the Afflictions damage away from heat and towards electric, which is bad for this. So that's why we're not running Shock Trooper here, is so that we don't accidentally dilute our status. That said, it's like still very usable. So if you want to do a regular melee setup with Shock Trooper, I think that's perfectly fine. I think that's all of the components to this that are like important. The only other thing that you should probably consider is that if you're using a Sentinel weapon for this to like do the priming, you kind of want no other DOTs on the Sentinel weapon, because if I have Slash on there and then it gets procced, it gets increased by Afflictions, and the Slash proc gets the kill and not the heat dot, Contagious Bond Chain won't go off. So it's important that you have a Sentinel weapon that's kind of set up to prime like this, where it has only heat as the only DOT, and then all of the other statuses are just entirely for increasing other things damage. So that's why we have Viral, Magnetic, Rad, and Puncture on here. Impact just came with the Hellstrom, but that's why I'm using the Hellstrom specifically, so that we have all that stuff, right? That said, there may be a better weapon for this. If you have suggestions, put them in the comments, feel free. I haven't really optimized for this part of it that much, so it's worth considering. And then I'm going to switch back over to a normal Doriga build. So we have Guardian here and we have Arc Coil, just so that we have extra defenses here. And then, you know what? Why not? Let's have more priming on top of our big circle of priming also. So this together is probably what you'd expect from most Dorigas. And then all together, one more time, we do that slam. And then as these dots tick down, you'll notice that the Contagious Bond Chain goes off. And what you would expect from an actual mission is you'd probably be doing something like this. And it almost instantly procs on these level 230s. So this does do quite a bit of damage. One thing I would say is that if every enemy was an Eximus like this is going to have a little bit more trouble getting through these Eximus, just because we do have the Overguard, right? So Afflictions won't start proccing until one of these enemy loses all of their Overguard. But because your Sentinel is priming with Magnetic anyways, a lot of that is sort of ignored. You can do this with any melee weapon in the game if you want to. Another thing that I would recommend is like just doing a heat slam. So I have like a heat dagger kind of set up for this, where it's kind of the same idea, right? We just have a very slam focused Afflictions heat dagger here. You will notice that I was using a heat mod on here, but it's basically irrelevant for this. And then the idea is that as soon as we break the Overguard here, the same chain happens. So use whatever weapon you want. I just used Ghoulsaw because I was playing with it because Mika said it was cool, and I agree. So yeah, very fun. All right, so that last build takes a billion years to explain. This one doesn't. This one's really simple. We have one ability subsumed, and that's the main thing we're going to be focusing on. So here I have Tesla Nervos subsumed. And what you'll notice here is that basically every time this shocks, it tends to sit at like around 1 electric dot. And what I want to show you here is what happens when you put down Zephyr Tornadoes. So notice how many more electric dots we're getting here. So we have 15 on this guy, we have 15 on this guy, we have 19 on this guy. And so basically abilities can hit Zephyr Tornadoes. That's, I think, probably the main thing that you should consider here, is that if an ability does something, it's going to hit the Zephyr Tornadoes and do that thing again. So with that knowledge, what you should consider is that Tesla Nervos actually has this augment right here, which basically creates an explosion when you kill an enemy with a Tesla attached to them. So if they have 100% health when it was attached, it'll do 100% of their health to every enemy around them. Kind of like the same way that Sobek acid shells would work, or like some of the other ones like that, right? It's kind of like you have Sobek acid shells on every single weapon that you use, which is really, really fun, right? Like that's a pretty cool augment in general. But because it can hit Zephyr Tornadoes, we can do some pretty funny things with it. So here's the idea. We throw out the Tesla Nervos, we let it attach to people, and then when we kill one of these enemies, it'll do that damage to everybody else in range also. And not only that, it'll hit the tornadoes, and then it'll do that damage again, and then that damage will be done again for every single tornado it hits. So we do, 7 or 8 times their health worth of damage instead of just like 1 Tesla bank worth of damage. So the other effect that we're going to be using here, and this is just kind of part of how Zephyr's small tornadoes work if you have funnel clouds equipped, is that if you ragdoll them with anything, they'll get sucked up by the tornadoes like this. So it kind of ends up working the same way that the normal tornadoes would work. It's just big. So we're going to do the same thing. I'm going to throw out the Tesla bank here. And you can actually pull them into the Tesla bank by just throwing airbursts at the ground so that the Teslas can actually reach. And then once they reach, if you kill any of these enemies, the Tesla bank will explode and kill everybody else. So that's kind of the thing we're going for here, is big grouped up enemies all getting hit by a big explosion, which also hits the tornadoes, which hits them again, which chains forever and is really fun. So very, very cool. The other thing that you'll notice here is that I'm actually using the Lex Prime. The reason that I'm using the Lex is because it's one of the very few weapons in the game that can actually go through the tornadoes and hit enemies. Or more tornadoes. Like you can see that if I shoot this through a bunch of tornadoes like this, it's going to hit all of the tornadoes on the way there. Usually it deletes projectiles, and this is like one of the very few cases where it doesn't. So worth considering. Okay, here's the build again. So only things that really matter here are you're running a lot of range. As long as you have an overextended reach and stretch equipped, I think you're probably just fine. If you want, you can also put the extra range in your Excellence slot here over Prime Sure-Footed. Rolling Guard is really good, especially on Zephyr. She only tends to really take damage from like a very small amount of sources, and one of those is like Arson Eximus. So if you get hit by an Arson Eximus, it's good to just have a way to cleanse status like this. The other thing that you'll notice here is that I'm not running Aegis, and instead I'm running Circumvent. I generally think that if you're running a Warframe that has like some sort of dodge chance or like a ranged immunity like this that doesn't get hit that often, Circumvent is going to be better than Aegis just as a defensive option. So that's what I'm running. And then efficiency for duration. You can put whatever you want here. And to be honest, Zephyr is so tanky anyways that you really don't even need Circumvent, so you can drop this too. Otherwise, this build probably looks like exactly what you would expect it to be. Tesla Bank is equipped. Funnel Clouds is equipped because if we have more tornadoes, the more damage Tesla Bank is going to do. In a lot of ways, this is kind of like a reverse weapon platform build, kind of similar to like Equinox, where if your weapon is good and does a lot of damage, then Tesla Bank will do a lot of damage. And if it isn't, then it won't. That's kind of how Zephyr works in general. So just make sure that you pair this with a weapon that can kill stuff. And as long as you do that, then you'll probably be fine. Again, my recommendation is the Lex. This is usually what I run. That doesn't mean this build is good. I just think it's funny to run Hemorrhage. So that's what I'm running. But in theory, like having heat and having the slash effects from this on the same build are like not that good. So if you wanted to drop Hemorrhage for like more damage or really like anything, I think this is probably better, if anything. I just think Hemorrhage is funny, so I run it. This is my Riven. It doesn't really matter. Just replace this with damage or great damage or multi-shot or kind of whatever you want. I just have this, so I'm running it. All right, this next one is a little complicated to get examples of inside of the sim, so I'm going to do my best. What we're going to be talking about is omamori. I have a persistence set up on Inaros here, just so that I only can take 500 damage at a time. But what I want you to pay attention to is my health bar as I get shot at by this Arctic Eximus. You'll notice that when omamori is on cooldown, occasionally, like probably about every 4 hits or so, while omamori is on cooldown, I will just not take damage. So there, you might have just seen it. Omamori was still on cooldown. Here, I'll replay that real quick, just so you can see it. If omamori is on cooldown and I take damage from this rocket, if both the explosion and the initial impact of the bombard rocket are blocked by omamori, I just won't take any damage, even if omamori is on cooldown. And the reason for that is because the omamori has kind of 2 parts to it. The first is it's like heal flip a coin thing. So here, we'll look at the ability stats right here. So the first part is this block chance right here. So this 50% thing, that 50% is basically on every single hit, I have a 50% chance to block it, regardless of if the heal is on cooldown or not. And then the second part is the health multiplier, which is it just takes the initial hit that you took in damage, and then it'll either heal you or just go through, depending on if that procs or not. So it's basically always a 50% dodge chance effectively, and then on top of that, it has that heal effect. Already worth considering on a lot of frames just because of that, because like, let's say you're shield gating, for example. If you get hit with half of the bullets that you normally would, that's pretty good. That's very good, in fact. I think this is actually one of the best shield gate defensive options for a subsume in the entire game. So just with that alone, it's very, very good. The second part of this is that heal isn't affected by Persistence's gate. So in this case, where I have Arcane Persistence, which makes it so that I can only take 500 damage, if the heal goes off, because I block something, it'll be before Persistence. So let's say you're at level cap, for example, and you take 1 billion damage. Instead of taking 1 billion damage, you'll full heal, and it'll reset all of your persistent gates effectively. So if you're on a Warframe that already has status immunity and doesn't have a way to really like heal themselves, omamori becomes a very good option, especially if you're high health. So this is a great option if you don't want to run Grace, for example, on Inaros, is you can just run omamori like this, and then you'll have a way to heal. That's independent from all of these other things, right? That said, I would not run this on Inaros. I think probably a better example for this is somebody like Banshee. Banshee is primarily a shield gate defensive frame, so this is kind of like what you would expect from most builds like this. So some combination of both shield recharge mods, Aegis, and a free slot here. You could use this as circumvent to, if you prefer this, or you could put rolling guard on here or something. But the main thing that you'll notice here is that I have omamori over my 4 here as my source of shield gating, or as my defensive subsume, because sonar is one of the best damage increases in the entire game, and then silence helps against basically every single Eximus in the game defensively. So she kind of has all she needs in here, and so all she really needs is a defensive subsume. So you could run this, you could run pillage, something like that. And pillage takes way more effort than omamori, so I've been running this. So now, of all things, we're going to be doing a hydroid build. The reason that I'm going to be talking about hydroid is mostly because I think plunder is kind of underexplored right now as like just a tool for stuff. And the main reason for that is because this is a universal buff, kind of the way that Nourish is. And so what that means is that it's going to apply to weapon damage abilities. I'll be leaving a link down in the description of the wiki page with all of those weapon damage abilities. But for this case right now, the main thing that you need to understand is that Pyrotechnics Temple's Subsume here is a weapon damage ability. So that means that this 200-ish corrosive damage that I have from Plunder will get applied to Pyrotechnics, and this will do partially corrosive damage. On top of that, Arachne is a universal buff, so this applies also. And then we're going to be using Tempest Barrage with Viral Tempest to prime also. And if you've ever watched Rowan is a Magmain's video on Pyrotechnics as a subsume, you might also know that if you ragdoll an enemy before you use Pyrotechnics, this thing hits a lot. So you can see that this guy got 30 heat stacks basically every time that I casted Pyrotechnics here, which makes it do a lot more damage. So that's kind of what we're getting from Hydroid here, is that we're getting 1, an ability that ragdolls in his 4, 2, a universal weapon damage buff in his 3, and then in his 1, we have viral priming. And so altogether, this is what the build ends up looking like. So we grab Arcane Arachne, we use Tentacle Swarm, and then we press 1 so that these guys get viral primed. And then when we press 3, we have that extra damage, and this starts killing stuff. And it does a lot of damage. You can kind of expect this to do a lot of damage too, because we have a lot of multipliers here, right? Like this is going to kill. The only issue with this build is that it's kind of energy intensive because it's almost entirely a caster build, right? And so because of that, it makes it kind of hard to justify running a setup like Brief Respite for shield gating. And I think probably if you were serious about doing this build, what you would do is you'd run Steadfast just for the energy regen. And then you would have to rely on a combination of Archon Vitality and the armor from Plunder to like really keep yourself alive. That said, I don't actually think this build is that good. 1, because Overguard will completely stop you from being able to suspend things with Tentacle Swarm. 2, because you have to cast basically twice every time you want to kill something. And then 3, Plunder is just, it's a little bit unreliable to keep up. You have to cast Tempest Barrage at least twice before you can really use Plunder to get the full value. And then by then, like a lot of times in real missions, enemies will just end up dying before you do all this setup. And so what I'm going to show you is the other version of this build that I think is actually good, which is Nullstar. The main reason that you would be using Nullstar here is because this is also a damage reduction. And so for the majority of Steel Path, a combination of the flat armor that you get from Plunder, the health that you get from Archon Vitality, which is also boosting the heat stacks that you'll get from Neutron Star, and the DR from Nullstar, leads to this being actually a very tanky build, even without like something like Brief Respite on. And on top of that, you get to keep your 2, which honestly is like one of the most fun abilities in the game. Like, look at how fast this is. It's so fast. And so this is kind of the actual build that you would be expecting from this, is that you kind of throw your 1 like this, and then once you have your erosive buff from Plunder, you can do a combination of running around and pressing 4 to do damage, and also stack Arcane Hotshot here, which will also increase your weapon damage buff. And so this becomes like a hybrid damage with weapons and damage with abilities build that I think is actually quite good. So this is actually my normal hydroid build now is this nullstar hydroid. I do think that there are better builds for hydroid in general. I do think pilfering swarm is kind of like one of the main reasons that you would be using hydroid. So if you want to use this, I would not run nullstar like this because the rest of these abilities are really quite good on him. The other thing that's kind of mid about this build is that it's kind of hard to fit strength in here because you want range so that your 4 hits more stuff, nullstar hits more stuff, and you want it so that you can grab stuff better with plunder, and also so that your 1 hits more stuff. And so you need the range, and you kind of need the energy economy because you're using a lot of abilities here, and you kind of need the duration so that plunder stays up, and also because it increases the number of nullstars that you get. So it's really hard to fit everything. So this is about as strong as I was able to get it and have it like be reasonable. For shards, this is what I mostly run. I run 2 casting speed and then 3 ability damage to enemies affected by corrosive. Your 1 will apply as a corrosive. When you have plunder active, nullstar will also apply corrosive. So these things together kind of make a hydroid really interesting. So worth trying if you like nullstar builds in general. I think hydroid's one of the better users of it. So definitely worth having like at least something in your arsenal resembling this. It doesn't necessarily need to be hydroid. It could be chroma. It could be mirage does it pretty well. Nova herself does it better than basically everybody. So just worth playing around with. All right. We're going to talk about a frame that I've kind of been avoiding. So the reason that I don't really enjoy talking about Sevagoth normally is because I think his best build is so ridiculously strong that it makes it hard to talk about anything else. This is Nuke Sevagoth. If you're not like familiar with Nuke Sevagoth, the basic idea is that you subsume over 4 with like roar, and then at a certain threshold, your 2+1 combo, so your reap plus sow, or so I guess plus reap, will do 100% of the enemy's max health as damage. So as long as you have roar up, this instant kills everything. Which it turns out is pretty good. It turns out killing the entire map with your AoE nuke is pretty good. I'll show you this build here in a second because I think it's really, really important to know about in the context of Sevagoth because, like, holy shit. This, like, goes through walls. This is by far one of the best nukes in the game. So worth considering, like, if you actually want to play Sevagoth for real. Yeah, this is a thing. This is such a thing. It's, like, the thing. That said, I do think that the most recent update brought an interesting optimization with Sevagoth in general. So this is like kind of what you'd expect from a normal Sevagoth build. I believe the other version of this that you'll often see is something like this. So you put this in here, and then you would put duration from concentration or something similar. Here you could put circumvent here, you could put Aegis here, it doesn't really matter. But this is the basic idea, right? Is that you just shield gate with a combination of brief respite and catalyzing shields. And then you hit the strength threshold so that roar plus the AoE damage that is like not listed anywhere here will deal 100% of their max health. Really, 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 really strong. So this is the other build that I kind of wanted to show off with Sevagoth. I do not think this is as good as the nuke build, but the nuke build is one of the best builds in the entire game. So it's not even worth like comparing them in my opinion. But what I do like about this build is that I think it's way funnier. So what you might notice here is that we have Well of Life subsumed instead of Roar. And the reason for this is because Well of Life actually will heal your shadow also, which I think is just fun. And on top of that, it absorbs status effects. So if you get heat procced or magnetic procced or anything like that, it will just go straight to your shadow instead. On top of that, we're actually running persistence on shadow. This is the main thing that I think is actually really useful on Sevagoth post patch. Persistent shadow I think is actually tankier than the other version of shadow, which was basically just a full shield gate setup. And part of the reason for that is because it can run triple umbral like this, and then on top of that just run 1 armor mod, and it breaks 1500 armor. So this is enough to beat the 1400 point that would be required if you got heat procced or corrosive procced to keep persistence up. So that's why we're running so much armor and stuff here, is so that persistence stays up even if we get procced weird. In this build specifically, it doesn't really matter because we just ignore the statuses as long as Well of Life is up. But if you're doing the normal nuke build, I actually run slash immunity like this, and then I run persistence still. And then the only thing that really kills you is like a magnetic proc and then getting nuked. So this is still quite good in my opinion. So this is kind of what I would run if you're doing a normal persistence setup for the shadow. But for this build specifically, we can run the extra attack speed so that our claws can murder things better. The actual claws, the only thing that you'll see here that's a little weird, otherwise this is basically just a normal influence build, is that we're running drifting contact. The reason I'm running drifting contact here over something like weeping wounds is because a lot of the ways that you would get combo on basically every frame in the game right now is by running 2 Archgun Dexterity Arcanes, but those do not apply to Shadow Claws. So when you're in 4, you kind of need some sort of combo duration outside of that, and so that's why I'm running this. If you do have some other source of combo duration equipped, like Naramon or whatever, this is better. I just run this because claws are going to kill everything in most content anyway, so you might as well just run the combo duration so you can hit big funny red number. Just something worth considering. So I'm going to use my 3 on this guy, and then I'm just going to use Sevagoth like normal kind of to start, just so we can get some stacks. And then the other part of this is that Well of Life does still apply when you're in your normal form. So this isn't just for the secondary form. This is also a form of survivability for your primary form. And now that that these enemies are dead and we have our shadow, I'm going to demonstrate what the shadow fight looks like. So same basic idea. We're going to just run over here for real quick. We're going to press 3 on something, and then we're going to switch to shadow. This is going to last 30 seconds with this build currently. So you have 30 seconds of functional invulnerability because we're getting about 200 health back a second from Well of Life. If you get a strength buff from like a relic mission, it is possible to hit over 500 health per second with Well of Life pretty easily. So you'll have to switch the build up just a little bit to hit that threshold. What I found though is that you basically don't need it though. A combination of moving and everything else will make it so that you always heal to full. And even if you don't have Well of Life active, what you can do is, and I'll show that here in a second, after I deal with this set, if you press 2, I'll let this guy hurt me a little bit. It is basically a full heal. So it's almost impossible to die as long as you have energy. And because you have Hunter Adrenaline, which is giving you back energy when you're taking damage, they can't kill you. So that's kind of the whole build when it all comes together. Is we're using Well of Life as like our primary sustain. We have our 2 for our secondary sustain. We can use this basically to instant revive too by using here. I'll show this too. So the other part of this build is that even if you die in your primary form like this, you go into shadow form, right? And your shadow form has the same amount of health as it would if it was just your regular shadow, and persistence still applies in this form. And because your 2 full heals you, it's really hard to die in your passive as long as you're like immune to status or like you don't take a slash proc or anything like that. So I do actually think it's legitimately better to run persistence on your shadow in like the normal nuke build too. Okay, time for outros. I took a while on this video because I was struggling to pick up like 1 or 2 other builds that I actually was enjoying, but I think I got to all of the ones that I really care about. So I hopefully people like this video. So let's just do the outro. Little Vibe, thank you for the 3 Forma bundle. Do appreciate it. Love the videos. Thank you so much. And then Faded spamming me with more Forma bundles. Thank you for the 5 Forma bundles. Appreciate it. And then, wow, who would have guessed it? It's another 5 Forma bundles from Faded Light. Flexed on John Warframe. Thank you. And then Anomaly, thank you for the 3 Forma bundles. Thank you for the Happy New Year. Appreciate it. This is a secret. It's not a secret anymore. Thank you for the Forma bundle duty and the Verda Medinia collection. Really appreciate it. Blue Popo, thank you for the Forma bundle. I love the insightful videos, gifting some Forma for the vids, but also to ease my own pain of trying to make Opticore work in the current Warframe meta. Actually, let me see. So there was a bug previously that's now been fixed where Volt Shields would stack infinitely with Opticore. I can show you what I run these days. This was my most used weapon for a very long time. It might even, like, on my profile still show it, but I've had this Riven forever. This was like the first Riven I ever opened that had, that was an Opticore Riven, and I basically grinded to MR12 just so I could equip this. And I've basically been using some variant of this build forever, so run this if you want to. I don't really think there's a way to make Opticore crazy good in the current meta, but something like this is probably worth considering. Yep, so Forma bundle, great videos, desire to experiment with stupid builds, find a way to break the game with intended interactions. Thank you for the Forma, really appreciate it. Forma. Thank you, Nana, for the Forma. And then Suffice, thank you for the 848 fund. I don't know what I'll do that. Have I heard of Ghoulsaw? I have. Thank you for the other 5 Forma bundle, Faded. Appreciate it. Jasper, thank you for the Jolly Grendel gift. Thank you for the 6 Rubito decorations. Rhino, appreciate it. Thank you for the Ombi Forma, Jason, and then also the regular Forma. Thank you for the Glockzilla Prex. The 20 Forma bundle that, holy shit, this is too many. You don't, I'm actually doing so good on Formo now. You guys are good. You don't have to send me anymore. And then the Kubro starter kit that I don't know what I'm going to do with, but thank you. And then the 7 Omniforma bundle from Citruk. And then the 30-day affinity booster from Duty. I feel like these guys are just competing at this point. And the Argon Poop Crystal, thank you, Demi. And then Little Trouble, thank you for the Forma bundle, appreciate it. And then the 30-day drop chance booster from Faded. And the 10 Omniforma from Duty. And the tank drones from Savant. These are actually in my back room. Or not my back room, sorry. The like operator area on my ship. So thank you for the tanks. And then the 10 Omniforma the 10 Omniforma bundle from Citruk. Thanks. And then the Forma bundle from Lord Marmalade and the What is Life. Thank you for the Forma bundle. There's so many gifts. I don't even know what to do with them. And then Citruk, thank you for another 10 Forma. Jesus. Ironic Muffler, thank you for the Forma bundle. And I think that was it. Holy, that was a lot of stuff. Most of these were given to me on stream. I don't really stream that often, but when I do, apparently people like to throw things at me. So thank you. Don't know when the next video will be. I do have a Corvex build that I need to finish at some point. I can kind of preview that right now. So there's an idea here where if you like run persistence plus reconstruct, your 4 heals like 930 health or something. And you get infinite energy from adrenaline, so I think this is actually better than Universal Fallout. But I want 2 more Umbral Forma on this before I finish it, so we'll have to get those at some point. But I think that's it. So thank you guys for watching, thank you guys for hanging out, and hopefully the next video will be fun too.